Welcome to the Mason Guard Show. Unscripted, uncensored, unapologetic. Hello, Internet. Welcome to the Mason Guard Show. I'm Scott Mason.
And I'm Ed Guard.
And we are back with a brand new episode of Does It Hold Up? And we have an interesting one today. We're bringing in a movie from 1998. We are talking about Rush Hour.
Jackie Chan and Chris Tucker coming out to do one of Jackie Chan's bigger films in America at the time.
Yeah, certainly one of the first. Now, this movie was directed by Brett Ratner. That name comes with certainly some infamy in his movies and his personal life. Let's name some movies that he did do. First off, though, of course, Family Man. That was the Nick Cage movie that nobody saw.
A Tower Heist.
That nobody saw.
Yeah.
Movie 43 that nobody saw. Hercules, the one that had The Rock, that a few people saw. Yeah. I didn't see. I think the only one that you could argue a lot of people saw was X3 The Last Stand, and everyone who saw it hated it.
Yeah, accurate. I mean, he was a producer on the Prison Break pilot. I think he was, which was great.
Prison Break was fantastic, the first two seasons. Yeah. And then you just pretend that nothing else happens after that.
Yeah,
You'll enjoy Prison Break.
After the first time they break out of prison and then get thrown back into prison.
Exactly. Yeah, the second time. Okay. We won't get into Prison Break. That's a conversation I could absolutely have another day. But if we could, I don't think we should gloss over, of course, that Brett Ratner's personal history. He has been accused of sexual assault by 6 different women, including Natasha Henstridge, Olivia Munn, and Ellen Page. Those are some pretty prominent names to be making those accusations. So
it's not looking good.
Not looking good for Mr. Ratner there. He hasn't made a movie, I think, in 4 years at this point. So,
and probably if he's guilty, there's a good reason.
Rightfully
why he
so. Then, no, absolutely, you shouldn't be working in the industry if some of the stories that I read are true at all. But moving past that, again, we're going to look at the movie itself. We're not here to judge Brett Ratner. Let history do that itself. Other people who are in this movie: Ken Leung, Tom Wilkinson, Chris Penn, Philip Baker Hall, who I always enjoy. That's kind of the big names and stuff to this movie.
Absolutely. I mean, this movie was made around a budget of $35 million. Interesting enough, it did $244 million at the box office.
That's insane for that budget.
So, I mean, for a movie when they weren't expecting people to know Jackie Chan in America, obviously people do and did and love him. And, that's why this movie absolutely crushed it.
Yeah, I was reading, actually, I even saw an interview where apparently Jackie Chan and Chris Tucker did not get along at the start of this movie. Jackie Chan was used to people who slow down their speech to him when they're speaking, and Chris Tucker did no such thing. Chris Tucker spoke like Chris Tucker, couldn't understand each other. Apparently he'd always show up to the set late, and they just absolutely didn't like each other. Jackie Chan was so professional. Chris Tucker was, living the movie star life, and they just did not jive. But clearly, by the end of this movie, they've sorted that out, because the chemistry in this movie is certainly what you can kind of remember.
Oh, absolutely. They really got along pretty well. I read some stories initially that Jackie Chan really was frustrated working with him because Tucker basically improvised every line of script he had in the movie, and those individual words that Jackie Chan was looking for cues weren't there.
Yeah.
So it really threw him off. Obviously, this was one of the first American movies where Jackie Chan actually had no dubs. Now, Ratner wanted that specifically so the character would have more authenticity, but that obviously came with struggle for Jackie Chan to actually produce and deliver on a lot of the lines.
Mm-hmm. I think actually the most interesting piece of trivia that I uncovered while I was looking into this movie is that this movie is responsible for the creation of Rotten Tomatoes.
Which is amazing. Like, Rotten Tomatoes was a guy just trying to create a database of Jackie Chan movies. And it turned into, like, the basic, our concept of how to review movies.
What a lot of people use as their basis for whether or not to see a movie is the Rotten meter. The guy's name was Sen Duong. And yeah, he just wanted a place where they could put reviews for Jackie Chan movies. Built the website in 2 weeks just so that he could do it just in time for the release of this movie, which then actually got pushed back, so he was way early. And then, yeah, just from there, the website grew and grew and grew into the monster we know today, owned by, I think, Warner Brothers owns it right now, which I'll take that with a grain of salt. Anytime you're on there looking up a Warner Brothers movie, remember who owns that website.
Absolutely. So, in line with how we normally do movies and review them, what did you remember about this movie before you press play?
Honestly, not a lot. I think I maybe saw this movie a couple of times back when it came out. And I went in, honestly, a bit worried. As I say, because I could barely remember it. And then you have the premise in the late 90s of, a black cop and an Asian cop coming together. I just kind of had this feeling in my head there's going to be a lot of low-key racism that's going to happen. The one line I can kind of remember, going in was, "Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth?" And that's immediately a racist joke. And if that's all I can remember, I'm a bit worried as I went into this movie of what I was about to see.
So that's funny. I actually went into this excited to watch it again. I love Jackie Chan and these type of action movies, and the comedy kung fu movies are just usually fantastic, especially from Jackie Chan. So I remember this being really lighthearted, really filled with action, some great scenes. Now I haven't seen it in a really long time, but I also went in with the mindset that hoping that it was more progressive than what it could have been. Like, I remember the same thing, that it was going to be about stereotypes, and so I thought that was going to be more progressive. That's the way I remembered it.
You could do a lot with it, right? Like, that's absolutely it. What about the sequels? Did you watch the sequels? I'm pretty sure I saw 2. I'm pretty sure I did not see 3 by that point. I think I checked out.
So I don't really remember them. I guess the whole, trilogy, I think it is, kind of blends into one sort of Jackie Chan fighting scene. What I usually remember about Jackie Chan movies is the outtakes at the end that he's famous for. For me, those are some of my favorite parts, and how he does so many of his own stunts and some of the more risky ones,
right,
is always incredible. So I was looking forward to this movie, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do remember this, I think, as kind of like the real launch of the Jackie Chan renaissance in, at least in North America for us, right? We'd had, the dubbed movies, but this is where Jackie Chan started to really get cast, So, again, I was looking forward to seeing that, because that is certainly what I remember is Jackie Chan and his stuff. So let's jump right into it then, Ed. We got our story script that we kind of talk about first. What are your first thoughts? Maybe give a rundown of the plot of the movie.
So I guess the plot of this movie is pretty simple, more or less. Jackie Chan plays an inspector from China, from Hong Kong, and he gets called in to help with the investigation of an abduction of
the Chinese counselor,
child, and he gets sort of partnered up with Chris Tucker as an LAPD / FBI agent to just waste his time. The premise is very weak.
Dumb.
It's just, I guess you just have to put that aside and accept most of what's happening to just get into the story and just wait for Jackie Chan to do his thing.
Yeah, and that's kind of exactly it. The whole premise, I think, is pretty dumb. The FBI are doing their investigation, and they don't want help because we're big, manly FBI guys. And I don't know, it didn't make any sense at all to me. So it's like, okay, we need to distract this Hong Kong cop. Let's call our buddy in the LAPD and he'll pick someone. And I don't know, it all felt really dumb. I do love the scene where Philip Baker Hall tells Chris Tucker that he's going to be, doing this very special FBI assignment.
G14 classified.
He sells that so well. But yeah, beyond that, the actual, if you put any thought into how this movie comes together, it immediately starts falling apart. But I do love the scene where the little girl gets kidnapped because she kicks ass.
Oh yeah, messes that guy's face up right off the bat. Like she fights everybody along the way. She's honestly highlight of the whole story.
Certainly one of the absolute highlights. I guess, I mean, if you know Chris Tucker, you kind of know what you're going to get with this movie. Chris Tucker, great in Fifth Element, and that's about it. The man really just loves to yell, as opposed to really making any jokes.
Yeah, I mean, the first, I want to say half of this movie is just Chris Tucker. And just kind of gearing up to who he is and what his role in the story is. And you're just sitting there waiting for Jackie Chan to come on screen and to do his thing. And every time Jackie Chan's on screen, he does his thing, which is great.
Yep.
But it's just, the first half is just painful, I think is the best way to put it.
Yeah, absolutely, for the most part. I think there's a couple moments I do like. Of course, the war scene is fantastic. We can get into that a little bit more, I think, in the soundtrack. But I don't know. I don't have a lot to say about the script of this movie. It's cliche. It's rather dull. There's not much to it. The bad guy's plan at the end doesn't make any sense to me. Of course, Tom Wilkinson turns out to be bad. I don't know why we need that twist, but this is my big thing is he makes a big speech about how this art belonged to him previously, and then now it's being taken. But his original drop was the day before the whole art ceremony, and then it got pushed the next day because of the mistake that they broke in. Like, if that was his plan, then why was the drop the day before?
Yeah, I don't know. It was all awkward and weird, and for some reason he's there with a bomb. It's just, it's just crazy.
It doesn't make sense. Yeah. At the end, he then seems more worried about the cash, and his motivation is all over the goddamn place in this movie. And again, we've said it before, sometimes a villain is the most important part of a good action movie, and this movie just doesn't have a villain worth mentioning. I mean, Wilkinson does fine for his performance. It's just, there's no dialogue, there's no motivation. Very, very, very weak.
Yeah, absolutely. Very, very basic story. It's really just a buddy cop movie, and and that's basically it.
No deep themes at play. Like, I thought, when it said, this was happening on the day the British are leaving Hong Kong, like, ooh, there might be some thematic elements to come from that. Nope.
Yeah, like, no commentary there. No,
nothing.
I was just weak.
I was hoping, just waiting for something deeper to come out of this movie, and nothing really does.
So, with that said, what did you score the story and the script?
I can't believe we barely even talk about this, but I just don't have much more to say. I mean, this gets a 1.5 for me. There's not a lot to this movie at all.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I struggled with giving it anything more, but I landed on a 2. Just because I think Jackie Chan,
it's his performance and the little girl. Those are the only things that I think you can give points to in this category.
I think it's great that Jackie Chan, delivered on his lines. He learned them. He worked hard to deliver in this movie with no dubs, which is great. I love the highlight at the end of the movie where Chris Tucker has to do like a 3-word script in Chinese. Or,
he can't
do it, but yeah, I fell on it too. So that rolls us into aesthetic. Why don't you talk a little bit about the aesthetic of this movie?
So aesthetically, I think what we're mainly going to focus on, obviously, with a movie like this, is the stunts and kind of that choreography. I think there's some great stuff in here. I think there is some very dated stuff in here, He has the moment where he climbs a wall, and I mean, that's no more than Michael Scott parkour, I think, as far as I can see. Parkour! But then there's also just some amazing fight scenes. I really like the one above the Chinese restaurant where the two of them are kind of having their fight moment together. There's some really great stuff in there. And Jackie Chan's just so creative in what he does with the different fight scenes.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I want to come out and say that I love Jackie Chan's movies. I've watched Probably all of them. I mean, maybe not everyone, but most of, right? Like any of the main ones, I've seen it. And what's disappointing to me on this one is a lot of the gags were intentionally stolen from other movies that he'd done. A lot of the stunts were repeated with the idea that people haven't seen these before in the in America, so they would enjoy seeing these gags, and this is why he wanted this movie to happen. Ratner actually flew to South America to meet Jackie Chan to convince him to do a movie with him because he loved him as well. So, a lot of what you get is a repeat of what Jackie Chan does great, and it's almost like a dumbed down version of it. I read some commentary about Jackie Chan being upset about how safe everything had to be in America. So a lot of what you see is not very dangerous for Jackie Chan. There's no jumping from building to building scene for him where he actually did it. So a lot of what you see is just a repeat of what you might have seen before. I mean, one of the coolest scenes is when they're in the opening scene of the movie, when they're in the short shipping yard, and he gets one crate pushed towards him, and he runs off one and jumps. Funny, he actually almost died in that scene. They screwed it up, so it almost ended up crushing him.
He's saying it's too safe, but he did almost die from that one stunt.
Exactly. But, I mean, that's probably one of the best scenes in the movie, and that's in the opening credits of the movie. It's like just right at the start. And, it's just disappointing that the highlight would happen right off the bat.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think there were some other ones. I like the steering wheel fight because, again, just he gets his creativity there. Although you did see in the bloopers how many tries it took him to get a lot of some of those moves down. The fight above the Chinese restaurant I mentioned, the banner slide at the end, I think is one of those stunts that I'm like, man, there's some impressive stuff going on there. That is really cool that he does that. But you got to remember, he was 45 years old, or almost 45, I guess, when this movie was made, right? Like, these stunts aren't going to live up to what he was doing 10 years ago when he was making these movies just in Hong Kong.
I just didn't, I understand that, but it hasn't stopped Jackie Chan from going on after this and making some amazing fight movies after this. That's my problem. I just don't think that this movie pushed any boundaries from him. And it was a repeat of a lot of what he'd already done. So that was what I struggled with. I mean, Jackie Chan's fantastic. When he gets on screen and does his things, it's incredible. But this movie is not the highlight of Jackie Chan doing his thing. If you want to see Jackie Chan crush it, go watch anything else that he's made.
Just about, yeah.
Drunken Master from the 70s, incredible. Rumble in the Bronx, Super Cop, Operation Condor, and the list goes on. You know what I mean?
There's a lot that you could certainly list into that. I mean, I think a lot of it came down to Ratner didn't know how to shoot Jackie Chan action. Right, there's a lot of cuts, and I mean the beauty of Jackie Chan is that he's doing it himself, and it's choreographed, and the fluidity of his movement, I think, is what you really enjoy. And when you're cutting around that, that's not what I came to a Jackie Chan movie for at all. So, aesthetically, I think the only other note I really had was that I really like Chris Tucker's car and want one myself. The
beautiful,
Corvette is gorgeous,
amazing,
So that's all I've got to say on aesthetic. Do you have any final points on that category?
Not really. I mean, it was just kind of blah. You know what I mean? I really don't have a better word for it. You go into this movie expecting some amazing things, and it just didn't pan out that way.
So where do you land on aesthetic then?
I fell on a 2.
A 2? Yeah, I think that's about it, with the stunts being the only thing that saves that from one territory in my mind. All right, let's move on then. Our next category, as we always do, is soundtrack. So soundtrack, I noticed 2 songs from this movie. The Mariah Carey scene at the bit, once again with the daughter, one of the highlights
Great
of the
scene.
movie. Yeah. She's singing along, and you just have the guys in the front rolling their eyes. Hilarious, fantastic. And of course, War, good God, y'all.
Yeah, Edwin Starr, great tune, used great in this movie.
Yeah.
It's probably the most memorable scene of this whole movie, maybe the entire franchise.
Yeah, I actually really liked the scene itself. Like, I forgot, again, in the middle of this movie that has a lot of problems, this is one scene that doesn't, and it's actually really heartwarming, where they're teaching, he's teaching him some dance moves, he teaches him some karate, but the best is when they show that, teaching the gun flip.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
It is an absolutely great scene. It's partly because of the song, But yeah, that's a highlight to me right there when it comes to soundtrack.
I mean, here's what I struggle with. If you actually look at the names associated with the soundtrack here, you got Drew Hill, Jay-Z, Wu-Tang Clan, Ja Rule, Slick Rick, Michael Jackson, Mariah Carey. What? Right? Like, how do you not get an amazing soundtrack out of this movie? I guess it's like songs that are played in the cars when they're driving, or a few different pieces.
Yeah, I guess when
he
switches the Beach Boys song,
exactly,
there's
right?
that.
So it's funny to me that you get such a dry soundtrack out of this movie when you've got so many huge names on this list.
Yeah.
But, I mean, overall, I would say the most memorable song and probably the most memorable scene in the whole movie is The War by Edwin Starr.
100%.
So, I mean, here's the thing when I score these. If there's a song that makes me think of the movie, I feel like they did it right. I don't know if that's one of these times, but I do think of this movie when I hear that song, War. I think they did a great scene associated with that song. So I'm going to give this movie a 3.
A 3. It's fair. I'll give you that. When I hear War, I do think of this movie. I don't think it salvages it that much at all, though. Like, again, the Mariah Carey scene is fine. That scene is fantastic. Other than that, not a lot of this stands out to me. I'm landed on a 2 for soundtrack.
That's fair. I just think, with these people, like when you're making a movie, if you're able to associate a song, that's what I'm looking for. That's what I appreciate in soundtrack. And that might just be a little bit of generosity here, but I still feel like I enjoyed that piece.
Fair, absolutely. I can't take that away from you. So let's move to our final category, and this is where we talk about progressiveness. Of course, this movie was made 21 years ago. Many sensibilities have changed, and this is the first time in the history of this show that I have the most notes for this category, more so than any other category. There is a lot wrong with this movie. Let's jump into it here.
Yes. So when I went into this, I kind of felt good about the way progressiveness was going to be displayed, because it is a movie where you've got someone who's not a white person in the main role.
Both leads.
The protagonist is a black guy and a Chinese guy. Great. I think that's good for progressiveness of the time. But as I dug into this movie is just basic racial stereotypes completely throughout. I actually dug a little deeper on this one and went into a little rabbit hole in the internet. And I actually found a huge essay and analysis of the Rush Hour trilogy. It's actually called The Manipulation and Role of Stereotypes in the Rush Hour Trilogy by Matt Lee. It really is the most sort of dig deep summary of all of the things that are wrong with this movie. It breaks it down on so many levels, the different way people are stereotypes throughout it, historically, with dialogue, through skills, through banter, all sorts of ways that this could be categorized. They broke it down in the first movie, The Rush Hour, that we just were talking about. There was 31 stereotypical jokes throughout it, and they actually broke it down that 27 of those were negative connotation.
Right.
So you mean back-to-back stereotypes and racial jokes throughout this movie. It's just jam-packed filled with them, which is disappointing because I actually walked into this feeling like it wasn't going to be that, and that is in reality what it was.
Yeah, that's really what it boiled down to. As I say, this is what I was kind of worried about going into this movie, just knowing with that 90s sensibility and the name Ratner behind it, that there was no way that this was going to be handled with any sort of niceness. I don't know how else to put that. It's just, there's so many lines. He calls him a Kung Ching cop.
Yeah.
That's a real line. Chris Tucker says that. He tells a female cop she's safer behind a desk. They get to Gauman's Chinese Theater and he tells him it looks like home. Holy crap. Again, imagine that being said in a movie today. That movie doesn't get released in my mind. I don't think you could get away with this movie in 2019 now.
Yeah, it's just back-to-back racial stereotype jokes. And I think the reason that they get away with it is because it's not white. You know, it's not white people making the jokes for the most part. But I mean, really, is anyone offended by this? I don't know if anyone's offended by this.
Yeah, we're two white dudes.
Yeah,
just, saying here.
Can everybody laugh along with these jokes? Even today, I feel like, you know, you don't walk away from this feeling like that was unacceptable. But really, it should be. It should be viewed that way. And for me, for this reason, and for the, you know, hour I spent reading someone's thesis, I'm giving this movie a 1.
Yeah, I'm certainly going to land on a 1 as well. Again, there's so much more I could say about this. The N-word gets tossed around a few times. Jackie Chan says the N-word, and it starts a fight. Oddly enough, it's a white dude who gets upset and offended by it, but I don't even know what to do with that. Like, I feel like that is offensive in some way, but again, from my perspective, I don't know how to say that. And again, misogynistic. I want to go past just the racial stereotypes. Every time Chris Tucker talks to that female cop Johnson, you know, he says, sorry about spreading rumors about us sleeping together. And then, followed immediately by Jackie Chan grabbing her breasts through the vest. Like, she is treated so horribly in this movie, other than getting one brief moment of defusing the bomb vest at the end. Oh, it's just so bad. And again, when you combine that with the Ratner history...
So
extra ick.
Yeah, awkward. I mean, even that scene where Jackie Chan does grab her is just a rip off of a joke from Mr. Nice Guy, which is disappointing. You know, it's just.
But that's the joke Ratner wanted to carry over again.
Exactly.
I feel there's something there. And then again, I think the last thing when it comes to just to really display how this movie feels about race. Is at the end of the movie, they make a point where Jackie Chan talks about how important these art pieces are. They are his country's history. They are its heritage. You know, he makes this impassioned speech, and I thought, oh man, this movie's about to say something. And then they drive a car through the art. They shoot at the art. They destroy it. It does lead to that amazing scene where he's fighting with the vase on his back and just trying to keep it up. But then they shoot it right afterwards, and it's like, oh god, that is literally like spitting on the face of Chinese history right after talking about how important Chinese history is.
God, you know, the funny thing about that scene is the first release of this movie, that scene wasn't included. And the test group that actually saw the movie felt like there wasn't enough Jackie Chan action in the movie, so they went back, recreated that scene, and reshot it. Probably one of the better fight scenes in the movie.
Yeah.
Jackie Chan doing his thing finally.
Thank you, test audiences, because that's, again, I think the only good thing about this movie are the Jackie Chan sequences, so thank God we got a couple more thanks to the test audience. Yeah, it's a 1 for progressiveness. This movie would not get made today. Not with this script.
Agreed. So that moves into our overall enjoyment of the movie. Scott, how did you feel about it in the end?
Well, I think, again, how kind of wound up I got, and that last little bit might kind of give it away. I can't recommend this movie at all. Yes, there are a couple of enjoyable moments throughout. Absolutely. I can't take that away. Some Jackie Chan fight sequences that are great, but if that's what you want, as you said, go find a better Jackie Chan movie. Mr. Nice Guy, Super Cop. Let me just say Super Cop. If you are looking for great Jackie Chan, go find Super Cop. It was fantastic. This movie is not worth the time, and again, if you're in one of the groups that this movie harpoons, it's not for you. I don't feel it's there. I don't think, it has any real value outside of, as I say, Jackie Chan, watching him do his thing.
Yeah. So what did you give it as a score?
That's a 1.
It's a 1. Yeah, it's a 1. I agree. You nailed it there. If I want to go see Jackie Chan do his thing, I'm going to put on Drunken Master. I mean, I love that one. It's old school. The fight with the bench at the beginning, just incredible. But at the end of the day, this movie just doesn't do anything great. And the few things it does okay aren't the best version of that.
You can find better somewhere else. It's not the best buddy cop movie. It's not the best kung fu movie. It's not the best anything.
No. All right. So overall, we do not recommend that you go back and watch Rush Hour. neither of us can really remember Rush Hour 2 and Rush Hour 3, so no commentary there. But at the end of the day...
Don't make us do more. I don't think I want to after this.
But yeah, so it's a 1. It does not hold up.
Yep, and that's going to bring us to the close of another show, guys. We want to thank you so much for tuning into the Mason Guard Show. I'm Scott Mason.
And I'm Ed Guard.
Let us know what you guys thought of this episode somewhere on the internet. You can email us at TheMasonGardShow@gmail.com or hit us up on the socials, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, @MasonGuardShow. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time.